Officer Caleb Merritt was pushing through the frozen back roads of Pinecrest, Colorado when his headlights sliced the blizzard open and revealed a horror he would never forget. A man named Danny Croft, the brutal enforcer of crime lord Victor Harlow, was slamming a chained, heavily pregnant German shepherd against a concrete barrier beside an abandoned cannery, screaming, "My cargo doesn't bolt." As the snow turned crimson beneath the dog's trembling paws, Caleb threw open his cruiser door and sprinted toward them, knowing in that instant that justice would find its way to every person behind this cruelty. What happened next will make you cry and believe in miracles again. Before we start, tell me where you're watching from. Drop your country in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Snow fell like shattered crystal over the mountain town of Pinecrest, Colorado, a place where the cold always seemed to carry secrets. Late-night patrols along these frost-locked roads were routine for Officer Caleb Merritt. But tonight felt different. The storm was heavy and suffocating, pressing down on everything, and the air carried a bitter thread of diesel and frozen pine sap. Caleb was 36 years old, Pinecrest's most senior patrol officer. A former military police sergeant, he had come home to Colorado after 2 deployments overseas, trading desert sand for mountain snow without complaint. He wore the department's standard charcoal gray winter patrol jacket, the Pinecrest badge embroidered in gold at his chest, and heavy lug-soled boots caked with road salt. His radio was clipped at his shoulder. Despite his broad, unhurried frame, his eyes never stopped moving, a soldier's habit that no amount of peacetime had erased. As he rounded a sharp curve near the edge of town, something in the dark moved. He eased off the gas, rolling down the window to let the shrieking wind pour inside the cab. Through the skeletal silhouettes of lodgepole pines and a rusted chain-link fence, a shape shifted. Then came the sound, a strangled cry, high and broken, swallowed almost completely by the gale. Caleb's stomach dropped. He hit the high beams. The light slammed like a hammer into the scene unfolding beside the old abandoned cannery at the edge of the Pinecrest industrial lot. A man stood in the flood of light. Danny Croft. Locals called him the Wolf, a name born from the snarling wolf's head tattooed across the side of his throat, and from his habit of circling problems until they bled out. Danny was 31, lean and angular, his face creased with the kind of sleeplessness that comes from living outside the law. He wore a beat-up olive field jacket over a flannel shirt, torn canvas pants, and steel-toed work boots. Once a long-haul trucker out of Pueblo, he had slid one bad decision at a time into becoming the chief enforcer for Victor Harlow, a crime lord building a trafficking empire across the Mountain West. Danny's gloved hands gripped a short iron bar he was swinging like a weapon. At his feet, chained to a rusted concrete barrier post, was a German shepherd female, deep into pregnancy. Her coat, once a rich sable and fawn, was plastered with ice and mud. The chain bit into her neck with every flinching movement. Her swollen belly trembled visibly even from a distance. She turned her head toward the headlights, eyes wide, dull with exhaustion. Then Danny swung the bar down across her shoulder and barked, "My cargo doesn't bolt." Snow erupted where his boot struck the ground beside her. Each blow buckled her legs further. Her paws left dark red crescents in the white drifts. Caleb didn't think. Training moved his body before his mind caught up. He slammed the cruiser into park, shoved the door open, and stepped out with his service pistol drawn in one clean motion. "Pinecrest police, drop it. Now!" His voice cracked across the frozen clearing like a gunshot. Danny spun, squinting into the beams. For a suspended second, Predator and lawman locked eyes. Something behind Danny's gaze calculated, shifted. He spat into the snow, cursed under his breath, and bolted, crashing into the tree line and disappearing into the dark snow-laden pines, leaving only the idling rumble of an old pickup truck and a curl of exhaust hanging in the air. "Stop! Hands up!" But Danny was already gone. Caleb advanced to the dog. The chain was thick, padlocked tight to the post. The dog flinched as he crouched beside her, but did not snap. She lifted one trembling paw barely. "Easy girl," he said. His voice dropping to the gentle register, he'd once used with K9 handlers at the base. "I've got you." He holstered his pistol, unclipped his multi-tool, and worked the chain until a link gave way. The dog slumped forward and leaned her whole weight against his leg, shaking. He slid both arms beneath her, feeling the shudder of her ribs, the unmistakable swell of her belly pressing through his gloves, and lifted. Snow stung his face as he turned toward the cruiser. Then something glinted near the post in the beam of his flashlight. He crouched and found a cheap prepaid phone. Screen still lit. Across it blinked a single message. HV delivery compromised. Recover asset now. Below was an attached file. A spreadsheet. Column headers read, K9 inventory tracking codes. Caleb's jaw locked. Victor Harlow. The whispers at the station had just become something he held in his hands. He looked at the dog, at her half-open eyes, at the quiet trust forming in them even through the pain. "You're safe," he murmured. "Nobody touches you again." He loaded her carefully into the back seat, covered her with his spare patrol jacket, and slid behind the wheel. As he pulled onto the road, the storm seemed to tighten around the truck. He radioed dispatch. "This is Officer Merritt. I need animal control and backup at the old cannery off Route 9. Suspect fled on foot, maybe armed. Transporting an injured animal, possible evidence." Over. Static crackled back, but he was barely listening. His eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. The dog had curled into the seat, belly rising and falling in slow, fragile breaths. He named her Luna right then, something steady and bright to hold on to. As he drove toward Pinecrest, the snow thickened and swallowed the road behind him. He gripped the wheel and understood, with perfect clarity, that justice was already in motion. The people behind this cruelty would pay their price. Caleb eased down Pinecrest's main street, a narrow corridor of frosted storefronts and snow-buried porches. Luna lay curled in the back seat, wrapped in his patrol jacket, breathing in shallow pulls. He'd spoken softly to her the entire drive, not caring how it looked. The clinic sat at the far end of the main block, a converted Victorian building with a hand-painted wooden sign above the door, Ridgeline Animal Care. Warm amber light pushed against the frosted windows from inside. Caleb parked close, lifted Luna against his chest, and pushed through the door. A small bell rang. A woman emerged from the back hallway, pulling off latex gloves. Dr. Lena Shaw was 30 years old, compact and sure-handed. Her dark hair was pinned back in a loose knot. She wore moss-green scrubs under a quilted vest with the clinic's name embroidered above the pocket. Raised in Grand Junction, she'd completed her veterinary degree and come back to mountain country because that was where the work was hardest and mattered most. Her gray-blue eyes held a calm that could settle a panicked animal or a rattled first responder in equal measure. Caleb introduced himself quickly and laid Luna on the stainless steel examination table. The dog whimpered softly but didn't snap, her tail tucked against her belly. Lena's gloved hands moved with quiet precision, pressing, listening, murmuring comfort. "She's late term," she said, "badly dehydrated, and these lacerations on her shoulder are fresh." Her fingers paused along the dog's neck. "There's something here, a ridge under the skin." Caleb set the prepaid phone on the counter. "Found this at the scene." She was chained to a barrier post at the old cannery. "The man who was beating her, Danny Croft, took off on foot when I arrived." Lena retrieved a handheld chip scanner. The reading beeped once, sharp and clean. A code number lit the screen. Her eyebrows drew together. "This is a decommissioned law enforcement K9 registry code," she said. She turned the scanner toward Caleb. She belonged to a state program that was shut down 7 months ago. They reported multiple animals missing after the closure. Caleb stared at the screen. He'd heard the rumors. Harlow's network supposedly moved anything that wouldn't raise questions at a checkpoint. Dogs, weapons, whatever fit in a crate. Lena continued her examination. She noted a healed suture line near Luna's ear, signs of prior professional handling, and drew blood with practiced efficiency. When she tilted the vial toward the light, something shimmered at the bottom of the dark draw. "There's a residue in here," she said slowly. She dipped a test strip. It shifted blue within seconds. Narcotic traces. This dog has been in direct contact with controlled substances. Not internally, but on her coat, in her wounds. She set the vial down. Someone has been using her. Testing transport methods. Her voice hardened. And she's pregnant, which makes it significantly worse. Luna let out a low moan. Caleb rested his hand on her head, feeling the wire tension of her muscles slowly begin to soften under his palm. She was trained before this, he said quietly, watching the dog's amber eyes track every movement. Look at how she watches us. She wants to trust. She's just waiting for the next hit. Lena prepared a saline drip and threaded the line into Luna's foreleg. The dog shivered once, deeply, then stilled as the fluid began. You did the right thing getting her here fast, Lena said. Another hour outside and the litter would have been lost. Maybe her too. Caleb nodded, but his mind was already sorting pieces. Danny Croft, Victor Harlow, K9 inventory codes, narcotic traces. He looked at his radio and made the deliberate choice not to call it in, not yet. He needed to see the shape of it before he let the news spread. Lena draped a thermal blanket over Luna and adjusted the 4-line. She can't stay here long if the people who were using her know she's been recovered. If someone beats a dog in public, they won't hesitate to come find her. I'll keep her here tonight, Caleb said. I'll put a unit outside if I can arrange it. Tomorrow I start pulling the file on that chip. Find out who her handler was and where she was last officially registered. Lena nodded. I'll run the full blood work for confirmation. If you're right about the trafficking connection, officer, we're standing at the edge of something much larger than one dog. She looked back at Luna, her expression softening. She deserves better than what they gave her. Caleb crouched beside the table and looked into the dog's eyes. Golden brown, deep and watchful. We'll get them, he murmured. Luna blinked once, slowly, a trust gesture. Then she lowered her head onto her paws. Outside, the storm hammered at the clinic windows. Caleb stood, pulled his jacket tighter. He thought of Danny Croft vanishing into the tree line. He thought of the spreadsheet on that glowing phone screen. He thought of Victor Harlow's name, spoken in the station like a curse. I'll stay until she stabilizes, he told Lena. She didn't argue. She set up a folding chair in the corner and left a second 4-bag prepared on the counter. Caleb sat down, service pistol close, hidden beneath his jacket. In his mind, he replayed the sound of that iron bar, the sight of Luna's paws leaving red in the snow. He closed his eyes for a moment and made himself a quiet, iron promise. This time, the ones who hurt the innocent would not slip away. Luna shifted on the table, a faint sound rising in her throat. He reached out and stroked the back of her neck. You're safe now, he whispered. I've got you. Outside, Pinecrest slept under a thick white silence, unaware that in a small clinic at the edge of town, the first thread of a criminal empire had just been pulled. Dawn arrived over Pinecrest in shades of iron and pale gold. The storm finally spent, leaving everything under a deep, undisturbed layer of white. Officer Caleb Merritt carried Luna through the rear entrance of the police station, one arm supporting her front, the other under her haunches. She'd regained enough strength to hold her own head up. Her 4-line was still taped under a light bandage. The station was modest, 3 offices, a dispatch room, a holding area for human detainees, and a small animal recovery kennel tucked behind a reinforced door designed for seized or stray animals in between animal control pickups. Caleb had cleared and lined it with a fleece mat hours ago. He settled Luna inside. She hesitated at the gate, then stepped in on her own, turned once, and curled into the bedding. Her eyes tracked him through the bars. Just for now, he told her. You're safe. He returned to his desk and pulled out the evidence bag holding Danny Croft's prepaid phone. Scrolling through the message thread, he found timestamp after timestamp, communication with someone labeled only HV. The spreadsheet file ran deep. Dozens of registry codes, each matching the format of the chip number Lena had scanned from Luna. He cross-referenced it against the missing K9 reports from the state database. The overlap was almost exact. This wasn't one stolen dog. It was a supply chain. A knock at his open door. Officer Marco Vasquez stepped inside with a clipboard. Marco was 25, fresh from the academy in Colorado Springs, his winter uniform still stiff with new creases. He wore his black hair cropped close and carried himself with the eager posture of someone who'd studied hard and still had everything to prove. "Morning, sir," he said. "Dispatch asked me to check on the animal." "Luna," Caleb said. "Female German Shepherd. Late pregnancy. Victim of abuse with ties to Danny Croft." Marco wrote it down. "Croft, they call him the Wolf, right? Works for Victor Harlow." He glanced toward the kennel. "She's massive. The poor thing." "Keep it off the main radio channels," Caleb said. "We're sitting on something bigger than an animal cruelty case." Marco's eyes went wide, but he didn't push. He glanced at the security monitor above the desk. 4 grainy feeds showing the station's perimeter. "Motion sensor tripped twice overnight," he said. "North alley. I figured deer." Caleb leaned toward the screen. One of the feeds showed the alley beside the building. He rewound the footage and slowed it. For 3 seconds, a figure was visible. Hooded, broad-shouldered, lingering near the back fence before sliding out of frame. "That's not a deer," Caleb said quietly. "Run a patrol car past that alley every hour, starting now, and make sure this footage uploads to the cloud backup." Marco nodded and slipped out. Caleb rubbed his temples. The office smelled of burnt coffee and damp wool. On his desk, Luna's case file, the microchip code, Lena's preliminary notes. He added a notation about the intruder and went back to scrolling through Croft's phone. One photograph stopped him cold. A dimly lit storage space lined wall to wall with stacked cages. Inside each cage, a dog stared forward, some with shaved patches where 4 lines had been inserted, others wearing makeshift harnesses with small pouches sewn into the lining. Another photo was a hand-drawn map. Red pins clustered along the Wyoming border. He printed both images and pinned them above his desk. One by one, the pattern was forming. A sharp bark from the kennel. He walked back and found Luna standing, ears fully forward, body rigid. Her gaze was fixed on the far door as though she could hear something beyond the walls. The low growl in her throat wasn't fear. It was warning. "You hear it too," Caleb said softly. He killed the overhead light and lifted the edge of the blinds. The alley outside was empty except for swirling snow, but the hair on the back of his neck rose anyway. He returned to his desk and opened his encrypted email. He typed a message to Agent Claire Donovan, 44, a veteran with Colorado's Division of Criminal Investigation. Tall, broad-shouldered, with silver-streaked blonde hair and a preference for long wool coats that made her look more like a judge than an investigator. She'd helped him once before on a weapons case. He attached the inventory file. Wrote, "Need confirmation on missing K9 registry. Keep this off main channels." Hit send. Back in the kennel, Luna circled once and lay down, but her eyes stayed on the door. Caleb slid a steel water dish under the gate. She sniffed it, then drank slowly, her bandaged foreleg trembling but holding. The intercom crackled. "Merritt, it's Vasquez. Dr. Shaw's on line 2. Says she has lab results and wants to bring them in person." "Copy. Send her through the side entrance." Minutes later, Lena appeared with snow on her boots and a messenger bag over one shoulder. She gave Caleb a brisk nod. "How's she doing?" "Steady," Caleb said. "Alert. Keyed up." Lena set her bag on the counter and spread out a sheaf of papers alongside a flash drive. Blood panels confirmed the residue. Multiple narcotic markers. Whoever handled her was using her as a mobile test subject. She looked toward the kennel. "She's calmer than last night, though." "Security camera picked up someone in the alley," Caleb said. "Could be Croft. Checking to see if we still have her." Lena's brow creased. "They won't stop. Not if she's living evidence. We're moving her to a safer location. But first, I need to cross-reference every dog on that spreadsheet list." He slid the printed warehouse photograph toward her. "Recognize this room?" She looked at it and her lips pressed flat. That's the old Breckett cold storage facility north of town. It's been closed for 6 years. Caleb wrote it down. Good. That narrows our radius considerably. Another sharp bark. He rose and moved to the side window. A dark sedan rolled slowly past the station on the snow-packed street. Tinted windows, no plate on the rear bumper. He memorized its profile and watched it disappear at the intersection. Lena's hand drifted to the kennel bars, her fingertips finding Luna's fur through the gap. She's been through hell, she said quietly. But she's still trying to protect something. That's why I gave her a name, Caleb said. He pulled a heavy blanket over the top of the kennel to dim the light. She needs to feel like she's hidden. The clock moved toward noon. The storm had softened to steady flakes. Luna's breathing deepened into sleep. Caleb locked Croft's phone in his evidence drawer and stared at the corkboard. The names, the locations, the chain of missing animals. Then he looked at the kennel. Hang in there, girl, he murmured. We're going to end this. Somewhere outside in Pinecrest, Danny Croft was already planning his next move. But in the holding kennel of a small mountain police station, the first real threads of Victor Harlow's empire had been caught and were not letting go. Pale afternoon light pushed weakly through the cloud cover, turning the station's windows into dull mirrors. Luna lay curled beneath her police blanket, ears rotating like small radar dishes at every sound. Officer Caleb Merritt sat at his desk, the inventory files arranged around him like pieces of a crime scene still waiting to be assembled. His coffee had gone cold. His nerves had not. A chime at the front desk. Officer Marco Vasquez appeared at the doorway. Freight delivery truck just pulled up, he said. Driver says he's got a supply drop for the evidence storage room. I don't have any record of an order. Caleb was already standing. Bring him in. He shifted his sidearm inside his jacket and walked out. Through the front glass, he watched the driver. A tall man in a brown insulated uniform jacket, ball cap pulled low, clipboard tucked under one arm, boots powdered with snow. His posture was practiced calm, but his eyes moved too quickly. The man pushed through the door and stamped his feet on the mat, scanning the hall beyond the front desk with a glance that lasted just a half-second too long. Danny Croft, the wolf. He was 31 under the fluorescent light, but he looked older, a week's growth along his jaw, the wolf tattoo peeking above his jacket collar. He'd swapped his olive field jacket for a stolen delivery uniform. His fingertips were exposed through gloves with the ends cut off. His smile was professional. His eyes went immediately to the hallway leading to the holding area. Afternoon, officers, he said pleasantly. Supply run for you. I'll need to see your paperwork, Caleb said. Danny handed over a clipboard. The form was blank except for a signature line. Caleb glanced at Marco. Run those truck plates. Marco stepped outside, radio in hand. In the kennel, Luna erupted. A rolling, thunderous bark that filled the corridor. The specific alarm of a trained dog who had caught a scent it recognized as danger. She rose and fixed on the front of the building, her gaze unblinking. Danny's professional smile cracked. Is that your dog? He asked. She's evidence, Caleb said flatly. Stay where you are. But Danny was already shifting his weight toward the hallway. Caleb stepped directly into his path. Don't. Marco's voice broke through the radio. Officer Merritt, those plates are fraudulent. This isn't a registered freight vehicle. Caleb's hand dropped to his holster. Danny Croft, you are under. Danny dropped the clipboard and lunged for the exit. Caleb grabbed his sleeve, but the man torqued his body and twisted free, sending a chair crashing sideways. The door slammed as he bolted into the alley. Caleb went after him, boots punching through the snow. The delivery truck sat at the curb, back door swinging. He grabbed the door and yanked it fully open. Inside, stacked cardboard boxes arranged like a false wall, and behind them, a small black duffel bag on the floor. Inside the duffel, a micro SD card, a bundle of zip ties, and a padded cloth muzzle sized for a large breed dog. Quick grab equipment for seizing Luna fast. Caleb pocketed the SD card and scanned the alley. Danny was gone. Tracks veering toward the frozen creek bed behind the building. then disappearing into the brush. He returned to the station. Marco met him at the door, chest heaving. "You okay?" "He walked right into the station," Caleb said. "That's either confidence or desperation. Could be both." He handed Marco the duffel. "Tag every item. Lock down all entrances. Now." At his desk, he inserted the SD card. A folder opened, dozens of video clips, filmed inside a dim warehouse. German shepherds running obstacle courses while men in ski masks timed them. Dogs being loaded into crates. A tattooed arm, Danny Croft's, injecting a sedative into a dog's hindquarter. A voice counting cash in the background, the cadence identical to Croft's drawl. Then the last file. Caleb clicked it and went still. A voice, low and deliberate. "Get that shepherd back before she puts anything together with her eyes. My cargo doesn't bolt." Victor Harlow. The first time Caleb had ever heard the man's voice recorded. The evidence was damning. It also meant there was now a target on Luna's back the size of a billboard. The station's side door opened. Lena Shaw stepped in, parka on, cheeks flushed. "Marco told me what happened," she said. Caleb turned the laptop so she could see the frozen video frame. "He dressed as a delivery driver. Left me this." Lena's eyes widened. "That storage space in the video, I recognize those markings on the wall. I saw them years ago during an abuse investigation that got dropped. It's Harlow's training warehouse." She straightened. "If Harlow sent Croft here personally, the operation is compromised and they know it." Caleb nodded. Through the kennel window, Luna had settled, but her eyes still watched the corridor like a sentry at a post. Lena crouched near the kennel gate. "Good girl," she said softly. "You remembered him." Luna's tail lifted once. Just once. Marco reappeared. Plates traced to a wrecking yard outside Pueblo. Vehicle was reported stolen 9 days ago. Caleb added it to the board. He thought of Harlow sitting somewhere comfortable, issuing orders through intermediaries. The warehouse, the inventory codes, the dogs used as test subjects. He thought of Luna's paws leaving red in the snow. "We need a warrant for that cold storage facility," he said. "And I need the state crime lab on standby." He looked at Marco. "Double the patrols tonight. Nobody comes through these doors without a badge scan." Marco left. Lena adjusted her coat sleeve and looked toward the kennel. "She's handling this better than I'd expect." Caleb slid fresh water under the gate. "Hang in there," he said to Luna. "They're not going to hurt you again." Somewhere across Pinecrest, in a wood-paneled office with a mounted bull elk above the fireplace, Victor Harlow listened to Danny Croft's frantic report and felt something cold and precise move through him. Harlow was in his late 40s, a heavy-set man from outside Denver who'd moved west to run logistics and stayed to build an empire. He wore a tailored charcoal suit even in deep winter. "Go back," he told Croft through the phone. His voice was level and final. "Recover the asset before anyone draws a straight line from her to me. I don't care what it requires." Back at the station, Caleb stood before his corkboard one last time before shutting off the office lights. Snow rattled the windows. Danny Croft was circling again. Above him, Victor Harlow had pulled the leash tighter. But inside the kennel, Luna slept beneath a police blanket, her breathing slow and even, and Caleb sat vigil in the dark, planning his next move with the quiet patience of someone who has already decided how this ends. The sky over Pinecrest shifted from gray to smoked copper as the sun sank behind the ridge. Inside the police station, the quiet hummed with after-hours purpose. Officer Caleb Merritt stood at the corkboard, his patrol jacket unbuttoned for the first time in days, sleeves rolled to the elbows, studying the pattern of evidence he'd assembled. Beside him at the desk, Dr. Lena Shaw sat with a laptop open, hair loose and tied back in a quick knot, scrolling through the last files from the SD card. Luna rested in the kennel, her belly pressed heavy against the fleece mat, and though she dozed, her ears swiveled at every sound. Every code on this inventory list matches a missing animal from a law enforcement K-9 program somewhere in the state, Caleb said, pointing at the corkboard. Lena nodded without looking up. "And these registration codes go north across state lines. This isn't an opportunistic operation. This is infrastructure." She enlarged a grainy still from one of the video clips. Cages stacked 3 rows high, harnesses with concealed pouches piled in a corner. This is an organized trafficking network. Caleb crossed his arms. Victor Harlow's network. He's been routing K9 dogs along back roads to move product, using the animals as live transport, exploiting how a police dog is perceived at a checkpoint. He traced a line on the printed map pinned to the board. And when a dog became a liability, too old, injured, pregnant, he disposed of her. Lena turned the laptop screen toward him. A document titled Protocol Run Log. Columns of figures and code words, and at the bottom a familiar sequence. Luna's chip number. She was a trial run, Lena said. They were refining their method, testing capacity. When she became pregnant, the protocol had nowhere to go. She became a problem. Caleb exhaled through his nose. The phone on the desk lit up. Agent Claire Donovan. He put it on speaker. Her voice came through measured and clipped. The voice of someone who never wasted words. Merritt, I got your files. You've handed us the first hard evidence on Harlow's operation we've ever had. But you need to know something. A pause. We had an undercover investigator working the same K9 angle. Her name is Rosa Tanner. She's 41, out of the Denver field office. She went dark 11 weeks ago while tracking a warehouse facility north of your location. Last confirmed ping was near an abandoned or processing plant about 18 miles from Pinecrest. We believe Harlow may have her. Lena's fingers stopped moving on the keyboard. Caleb sat forward. How long has she been missing? 11 weeks, Donovan repeated. Send me her photograph. It arrived within a minute. The woman in the image had close-cropped black hair, tan skin, and the calm, measuring eyes of someone who had spent years looking at danger without blinking. A badge was clipped at her belt. She wore a fleece-lined jacket and held a coffee cup in a way that suggested she was standing somewhere cold and pretending not to mind. Caleb printed it and pinned it to the board under a single word written in red. Missing. Lena leaned closer. If she found the facility, she might know exactly where Harlow is keeping the other dogs. Caleb ended the call and turned to Lena. This stopped being about Luna a long time ago. We have a missing investigator and a live trafficking operation, and they're connected. Lena was already pulling up a satellite map. I can overlay the locations from the SD card footage with the last cell ping from Rosa Tanner. If there's geographic overlap, we have a focal point. He watched her work. Her gray-blue eyes lit by the laptop's glow, fingers moving quickly across the trackpad. You're good at this, he said quietly and without flattery. She smiled faintly, eyes still on the screen. My father mapped elk migration routes my whole childhood. Finding patterns in data feels like a family skill. Luna let out a soft whine. Caleb crouched at the kennel bars and let the dog's breath warm his fingers. We're closing in, he told her softly. You started all of this. Lena found the overlap moments later. Here, she said. Old Ridgecrest or processing plant, 18 miles north. Rosa Tanner's phone last pinged within half a mile of it. And the background graffiti in 3 of the warehouse videos, I ran it through an image search. Same facility. Caleb drew a red circle on the map. That's our location. The station's front door opened with a blast of cold air. Captain Roy Briggs stepped inside. 57 years old, solid as a fence post, steel-gray mustache dusted with snowflakes. He wore the same winter patrol jacket as everyone else but carried himself with the stillness of a man who'd seen too much to be easily rattled. He glanced at the corkboard, then at Luna through the kennel window. Cole, he said, then caught himself. Merritt. Dispatch says you've been running something off the main channels. Building the case before anyone tips Harlow off, Caleb said. He gestured at the board. Victor Harlow has been operating a K9 trafficking ring through mountain communities for at least 2 years. We have a missing state investigator, a live facility location, and a dog who's given us more evidence than any informant. Briggs studied the board for a long moment, mustache working. Hell of a thing, he said finally. What do you need from me? Lock the station down tonight. Croft has already come through the front door once. Briggs tipped his chin in acknowledgement and turned back toward the entrance. Consider it handled. Lena closed her laptop and gathered her things, but her eyes lingered on the board, on Rosa Tanner's photograph beside Luna's chip number. They're connected, she said quietly. We just have to prove it. Caleb dimmed the office lights, leaving only the glow of the security monitors. On screen, the alley outside lay empty under drifting snow. Dark tire tracks were already filling in. He crouched one last time beside Luna's kennel. Rest now, he said. The worst part's almost over, but we're with you until it is. Luna blinked slowly, then lowered her head. The room settled into the muted quiet of a snowbound night, and the corkboard glowed in the half-dark, a constellation of evidence surrounding the photograph of a sleeping dog who had started it all. Darkness settled over Pinecrest like a second storm. In the rear lot of the police station, two cruisers sat with engines idling, their exhaust making white shapes in the frozen air. Officer Caleb Merritt buckled his tactical vest over his patrol jacket, fingers passing over his badge with practiced routine. Tonight was the first active strike against Harlow's network, a raid on the cold storage facility where Danny Croft had been staging operations north of town. Luna was alert in the kennel when he crouched beside her. 3 days into recovery, and already the animal that had slumped against his leg in the snow was reasserting herself. Muscles tightening, ears up, amber eyes bright. You're staying close, he told her. But not in the crossfire. She looked at him steadily, as though she understood the negotiation. Agent Claire Donovan arrived from the state in a dark SUV with 2 troopers and carried herself like someone who'd planned more raids than she cared to count. She wore a black parka over body armor, her silver-streaked hair tied back, a thin scar along her jaw visible in the floodlight. Beside her stood Trooper Sam Fletcher, 34, broad-shouldered, raised on a cattle ranch near Fort Collins. He'd done 2 years with the Marine Corps before joining State Patrol. His work boots and snow-dusted gloves made him look built for exactly this kind of weather. Donovan spread the map across the hood of her SUV. The facility sat behind a 1/4 mile of tree cover, backed against a frozen tailings pond. They would approach from the south, split into 2 teams, and secure the building before Harlow's people could react. On paper, clean and direct. Luna pressed against the cruiser door until Caleb relented and clipped her lead. Lena had argued firmly for leaving the dog at the clinic, but Caleb had countered just as firmly. She's the only one who knows Croft sent cold. Fine, Donovan had said. Keep her out of the shooting. They rolled at 2,000 hours. Headlights off, tires whispering over compacted snow. Luna sat upright in the rear seat, head near the gap in the window, nostrils working steadily. The facility appeared through the tree line. A long prefabricated building with a corrugated metal roof, ice-crusted and sagging. A single work light above a rear door threw a yellow cone into the blizzard. Through the swirling flakes, Caleb could see movement behind a fogged window. The convoy stopped. They moved through knee-deep snow in silence, rifles angled down, boots muffled by the powder. Luna moved beside him in the same compressed, ground-eating stride he'd seen in working dogs overseas. The building loomed closer. A faded stencil above the side door read, Ridgecrest Processing, authorized personnel only. Donovan raised a fist, moved. Fletcher and his team pried the side door with a crowbar. Metal screamed against ice. The smell that rolled out was immediate: animal musk, chemical residue, the sourness of fear and confined spaces. They entered information. Flashlights cut the dark. Rows of empty cages, doors swinging loose. Shredded harnesses on the floor. Broken syringes. The animals were gone. Clear right, Fletcher said. Clear left. Caleb moved to a desk buried in paperwork. Then he heard it. A soft electronic beeping from beneath the desk. He crouched and looked. A digital timer, taped to a smoke canister the size of a thermos. Smoke device. The canister blew before he finished. Gray fog erupted outward, filling the space in seconds. Someone knocked over a cage with a hollow clang. Through the haze, Caleb heard Danny Croft's voice, mocking and distant. Too slow, officer. His eyes stung. He grabbed Luna's lead and crouched low to find the cleaner air near the floor. Shapes moved through the smoke, 2 figures running for a rear exit. Gunfire cracked. A round punched through the metal wall a foot to his left. Donovan's voice cut the fog. Fall back. Left flank. Another figure materialized through the smoke, pistol rising. Before Caleb could acquire the sight picture, Luna launched, teeth closing around the gunman's forearm, dragging the barrel sideways. The shot detonated into the rafters. Caleb was already moving, tackle, wrench, cuffs on in 3 seconds. "You're under arrest," he said, breathing hard. The smoke began to thin. Outside, an engine roared. A truck spitting gravel, gone before anyone could reach the exit. When the haze cleared, the building stood hollow. Cages open, back door swinging, papers smoldering on the desk, leaving only black curls of ash. Donovan emerged from the far end of the building, face pale, scarf pulled down. "He burned the paper trail," she coughed. "At least we have one of them." Fletcher hauled the captured man upright. Mid-30s, a knit cap over dark hair, eyes darting. His jacket bore the logo of a freight company, but his calloused hands told a different story. "We'll run him and see if he talks," Caleb said. He looked at the scorched desk. He thought of all the records that had just turned to ash. Then he looked at Luna, chest heaving, muzzle flecked with smoke-dampened snow. She circled the room once, nose down. Then she trotted back to him with something in her mouth. A torn scrap of fabric, dark olive, a wolf's head tattoo pattern printed faintly on it. Danny Croft's jacket. Caleb sealed it in an evidence bag. Donovan pressed her palm to her forehead. "We regroup. We still have the SD card, the map, and the chip data. He can't keep running forever." In the cruiser on the way back, Luna leaned against Caleb's side with her eyes half closed, still watchful. He thought of how close the bullet had come. He thought of what she had done. "You saved my life back there," he said quietly. She didn't look up, but she didn't move away from his side either. The realization sharpened around him like a blade. They hadn't ended it tonight, but they had one captured man to question, and they had evidence, and they had the facility on record. Victor Harlow's shadow stretched farther than before, but so did the case against him. And Caleb's resolve had passed some threshold that no amount of smoke or gunfire could push back across. This was no longer an investigation. It was a reckoning. Night arrived without mercy over Pinecrest, pressing the blizzard against the station windows until the glass rattled in its frames. Officer Caleb Merritt stood at the corkboard, sleeves rolled up, jaw tight, when the sound rose from the holding kennel. Not a bark, not a growl. A low, labored panting he recognized from the veterinary notes. He moved fast. Luna lay on her side on the fleece mat, belly heaving, claws working at the bedding in slow, desperate pulls. Her eyes were wide and exhausted and completely aware. She was in labor. He had the phone to his ear before he'd cleared the doorway. "Lena, this Merritt. She's starting. Right now. On my way." Dr. Shaw's voice was controlled and immediate. "Keep her calm. Don't move her." The call ended. He crouched at the kennel bars and spoke to Luna in the same low register he'd used the first night, the one that seemed to reach her somewhere below training and fear. "You're not alone. I'm right here." She looked at him and kept breathing. Lena arrived in 8 minutes, well hat on, parka over her scrubs, medical kit swinging from one shoulder. Her cheeks were bitten red from the cold, but her hands, when she pulled on her gloves, were perfectly steady. They moved Luna together to the small recovery room at the back of the station, lifting her carefully onto a clean blanket on the floor. The dog whimpered but cooperated, feet scrabbling briefly on the tile before she found her footing. "Clear the hall," Lena told Caleb. "She's frightened. Extra people will make this harder." Caleb stepped into the corridor. Marco was at the front desk, already standing. "Everything all right?" "She's giving birth. Lock the exterior doors and keep all non-essential personnel out of this wing." Marco reached for his radio. On the security monitors above him, 4 feeds showed the station perimeter, 2 showing clear snowfall, 1 showing the front entrance, and 1 showing the rear alley. Caleb looked at that alley feed and felt the hair on his neck rise. A shadow at the edge of the frame. Then two. Then three, moving with the purpose of people who'd rehearsed this. "They're here," he said. Marco turned. "Croft. With backup." Caleb drew his weapon. "Get on the radio encrypted channel and call for state backup. Right now." In the recovery room, Lena had delivered the first puppy. She was rubbing the tiny form briskly in a clean towel when she heard Luna's ears shift. The dog's head lifted. "Nathan!" Then she caught herself. "Caleb." He was already at the door. "Company's coming. Lock this room behind me. Don't open it unless it's my voice." She pulled the door shut. He heard the deadbolt slide. Outside, headlights swept the station yard as a dark panel van rolled to a stop and killed its lights. Three men stepped out, dark coats, balaclavas, moving fast through the snow. Danny Croft led them. The wolf tattoo gleamed with sweat despite the cold. He wore a tactical jacket now, a short rifle in his hands. "She's inside," he hissed. "Take the dog and the litter. Harlow wants them alive." Caleb stepped into the open, service pistol raised. Wind pressed his jacket flat against his chest. "Pinecrest police. Weapons down now." The answering sound was gunfire. He dropped behind a patrol cruiser as snow exploded at his feet. He returned fire, placing shots with the economy of someone who'd learned long ago what the cost of a wasted round could be. The night became muzzle flash and echo. In the recovery room, Lena worked through the noise. A second puppy arrived as the first gunshot rang out. She wrapped it tight and set it in the padded crate beside its sibling, then bent back over Luna, murmuring steady encouragement even as the shooting rattled the small barred window above her head. Luna growled once. A mother's sound, deep and ancient, and kept pushing. Marco appeared beside Caleb from the station's side door, shotgun in both hands, young face hard and focused. "Radio's jammed," he said. "I got through once, state backup is coming. Maybe 12 minutes. "We hold 12 minutes, Caleb said. Croft shouted an order. A black canister arced through the dark and clattered against the station steps. "Lena, get down." The detonation blew out the evidence room window at the far end of the building. A fireball and a column of smoke rolled into the corridor. Alarms began screaming. The evidence room, which held seized narcotics from prior busts, caught immediately. Caleb pulled his jacket over his face and returned fire. One of Croft's men went down in the snow. Marco held the side door, taking measured shots, his hands shaking but his aim holding. Inside, smoke curled under the recovery room door. Lena looked at the crate. 3 puppies now, all moving, all vocal. She looked at Luna, who had risen on shaky legs, maternal instinct cutting through exhaustion like a blade. "Okay," Lena said. "We move." She bundled the crate under one arm and coaxed Luna with a firm, quiet command. The dog staggered once and then followed because her babies were moving and she could hear them. Lena led her through a back panel into the building's basement utility corridor, shoved a heavy shelf aside from the wall, and tucked dog and crate into a low-maintenance alcove behind the heating unit. "Stay," she whispered. "Quiet. Stay." Luna folded herself around the crate like a living wall. Upstairs, Caleb saw Croft break for the side entrance. He vaulted the cruiser hood and closed the gap, tackled Croft on the icy steps, grabbed his rifle, but the man twisted with the desperation of someone facing prison and threw a smoke grenade into the yard before Caleb could pin his arms. White-gray fog swallowed the space. Caleb swung through it, caught Croft's shoulder, took a strike to the ear that rang his skull. In the smoke, he couldn't see. He heard boots running. By the time the fog thinned, the van was a sound disappearing into the storm, leaving only shell casings and one man face down in the snow. The fire at the evidence room window cast orange light across the yard. Caleb got to his feet, ears ringing. Then sirens, the distant, clarifying sound of backup finally cutting through. He ran back inside. "Lena!" A muffled sound from the floor. A maintenance hatch swung up from the basement corridor. Lena came through it first, soot on her cheekbones and her forearms. The puppy crate clutched to her chest. Luna came through behind her, moving stiffly, tail low but swinging. 3 living puppies in the crate. All vocal. All present. Caleb exhaled so hard his knees nearly went. "They're safe," Lena said, voice stripped raw by adrenaline. "All 3. He looked at the burning window at the end of the hall. He looked at Luna licking her newborns through the crate mesh. He looked at Lena, who was still on her feet, still holding things together. "We held them," he said quietly. Outside, the first state police cruiser came to a stop in the lot, its light bar turning the snow red and blue. Caleb crouched beside Luna, one hand on her neck. "You did it," he murmured. "You kept them safe." The dog leaned into his hand, eyes half closed, still watchful. The puppies squeaked in the crate like the most ordinary miracle in the world. Morning came slowly and gently, the kind that doesn't announce itself. Pale light filtered through the station windows in soft bars, falling across the recovery room floor where Luna lay with her puppies tucked around her in a loose, breathing circle. The room smelled of antiseptic and cedar shavings and the dry warmth of a space heater doing its best. The burned evidence room at the far end of the building had been sealed off behind plastic sheeting. Outside, a restoration crew was already assessing the damage. It felt strange, the violence of the night reduced to insurance forms and contractors by morning. Officer Caleb Merritt stood at the window of the main office with a cup of coffee that had gone warm instead of hot. He wore the same charcoal patrol jacket, but it hung open. The tactical vest was gone. His face carried a day's growth of exhaustion, but his eyes were steady. Dr. Lena Shaw arrived before 8 a.m., her bag over one shoulder, snow still melting on her boots. She crouched beside Luna and made her assessment with quiet, careful hands. The puppies were 4 now, the runt that had been carried through the sting operation, reunited with the 3 born at the station. "All 4 stable," Lena said, looking up. "She's tired, but she's doing what she's supposed to do." She paused. "We need to move them out of here. This building isn't secure enough anymore, and she needs quiet." "Already arranged," Caleb said. He'd made the call at 5 a.m. Jake Harmon runs the rescue center outside of town, over on the Cascade Road. "I've worked with him before. He's got secure kennels and a full security setup." Jake Harmon was 43, lean and weathered, with the unhurried movements of a man who'd spent a decade working search and rescue dogs before opening the facility. He met them at the gate an hour later, cap pushed back on his head, handshake firm, expression softening the moment he saw Luna. "We'll keep her as long as she needs," he said. "Nobody gets past that fence without my knowing." They settled Luna and her puppies into a warm enclosure with straw bedding and a heat lamp. The space was quiet. No sirens, no gunfire, no frozen chains. Luna walked the perimeter once, checked each corner, then lay down over her puppies with a long exhale. Caleb watched from the gate for a moment. "You're not just evidence anymore," he said quietly. Victor Harlow and Danny Croft were both in custody by nightfall. The captured gunman from the warehouse raid had talked. Not completely, not without considerable legal negotiation, but enough. Enough to give Donovan's team a thread. Enough to locate Rosa Tanner in a locked utility building at the old processing plant, cold and furious and very much alive. The rescue was quiet. 3 state officers, no shots fired. Rosa handed off to paramedics with 3 frostbitten fingers and 11 weeks of intelligence stored in her head. The case against Harlow's network filled 4 full evidence binders. 3 weeks later, the old fire station on Cascade Road, the one the town had been debating how to use for the better part of 4 years, was repurposed by a unanimous council vote. By mid-morning on a bright winter Saturday, half of Pinecrest had turned out. They brought donations. They brought shovels. They brought their children and their dogs and thermoses of coffee. Officer Marco Vasquez carried in boxes of supply donations and organized them with the quiet competence of someone growing into his job. Deputy Tara Malone, newly transferred from Greeley, 28 years old, with an auburn ponytail and a reputation for methodical casework, oversaw the setup of the adoption desk with a small crew of high school volunteers. Captain Roy Briggs stood near the entrance, mustache trimmed, chest out, watching the whole thing with an expression that didn't quite admit to pride but came close. Jake Harmon walked through the building's new layout, pointing out where training courses would go: tunnels, scent stations, obstacle runs. "Good bones," he said, patting a wall. "We'll have everything operational by spring." A podium had been set up outside, in the cleared lot. Mayor Ruth Aldridge, 64, silver-haired, a Pinecrest native who'd taught elementary school before moving into city planning and eventually the mayor's office, stepped to the mic with the unhurried authority of someone who'd seen this town through hard winters before. "Today," she said, her voice carrying across the crowd, "we honor Officer Caleb Merritt, Dr. Lena Shaw, and a German shepherd named Luna, because of whom this town is safer, and because of whom this place now exists." The applause was warm and long. Caleb shifted his weight, uncomfortable in the way that people who've actually done something tend to be uncomfortable with being thanked for it. Lena was beside him, her green parka buttoned up, a faint smile at the corner of her mouth. Luna stood between them. She wore a new royal blue collar embroidered with the words Honorary K9, Pinecrest. Her 4 puppies dozed in a padded crate just behind the podium, tucked under a blanket, warm and small and safe. The mayor continued, "In partnership with our department and the Colorado Division of Criminal Investigation, the Pinecrest K9 Rescue and Training Center will open this spring, to train the animals who protect us, to rehabilitate the ones who have suffered, to make sure that no dog ends up chained in the snow again." More applause. A few people were crying. Caleb noticed but didn't comment. Lena leaned slightly toward him. "We didn't just stop something," she said quietly. "We built something," he finished. He looked at Luna. She was watching the crowd, alert, ears up, but without tension. The vigilance was still there, but the fear behind it wasn't. That was the difference between a week ago and now, between what she'd been and what she was becoming. Later, when the crowd had thinned and the volunteers were still working inside, Caleb stood at the top of the firehouse steps. The mountain ridge caught the last of the afternoon sun and turned it gold. The icicles along the roofline were dripping. He thought of Danny Croft in a county holding cell, of Victor Harlow in a federal facility, facing charges that his lawyers would spend years and considerable money not defeating, of Rosa Tanner, recovered, debriefed, already back at work, of the 4 puppies asleep in their crate, who didn't know and would never need to know what their mother had been through to bring them into the world. Mayor Aldridge appeared beside him and pressed a small engraved plaque into his hands. He looked at it and didn't say anything for a moment. "Silver Ridge owes you," she started. "Pinecrest," he said gently. She smiled. "Pinecrest owes you more than this." He looked back at Lena, who was crouched beside Luna in the last of the daylight, speaking to the dog in the low, easy voice she used when she didn't need the words to do the work. Luna's tail swept the ground in a slow, unhurried arc. He thought of the night on the road, the headlights and the iron bar and the blood in the snow. He thought of how close it had come, for Luna, for Lena, for all of them. And he thought about how sometimes the thing that saves everything is the smallest, most unremarkable act of courage. A man who sees something wrong and stops the car. Night came early, but softly. The firehouse glowed warm against the mountain dark. Above its doors, a new sign read, Pinecrest K9 Rescue and Training Center. It was a beginning. In the end, the story of Caleb, Lena, and Luna is not simply about dismantling a criminal operation. It is about what becomes possible when people refuse to look away. It reminds us that even in the coldest and most violent storms, miracles still happen when ordinary people choose courage over convenience and compassion over indifference. Just as light found its way into the darkest moments for Luna and her puppies, it can find its way into our own. Every act of decency, every moment we stand for the vulnerable is a small miracle. If this story reached your heart, share it with someone who needs hope today. Drop your country in the comments and let us know where you're watching from. Subscribe for more stories like this. And if you felt the grace of God working through these events, comment amen, because second chances are real, and they start with people willing to give them.